Good morning. My name is Kara Debacker, and my pronouns are she and her.
I'm Adam Debacker, and my pronouns are he and him.
It's customary at First UU for speakers to introduce themselves with visual descriptors for the sake of accessibility. Age, gender, skin color, and what they're wearing, and so on. But our message this morning is about identity, inclusion, and acceptance of differences, about not judging a book by its cover. So, as part of our introduction, we're going to describe one another, to tell you what is important to each of us about the other.
My mom is a fused glass artist and animal lover. She is smart and creative, fun to be around, organized, has a good taste in music, plans amazing trips, and is an awesome mom.
Adam, you are a third-generation Unitarian. You work in technical theater, you love dressing up, traveling, and listening to the crooners. You are deeply curious, observant, empathetic, perseverant, and funny. Adam, do you remember me telling the story of cleaning out the sock drawer at Ra-Ra's house when you were little?
Oh, I forgot about that.
You were probably 4 or 5 years old, and we were sorting laundry. I remember you were standing on a chair to reach the door, kind of peering over the edge as we put the socks away. I was showing you how to find matching pairs, and probably learning how to count at the same time. I picked up a sock with its mate and prompted you, look, one sock and another sock make, you said,
A puppet show.
A puppet show. Yep. You climbed down off that chair and started running around with a sock on each hand. You had your own answer based on a worldview far more creative than mine.
Having a disability can mean many things too. I have Down syndrome, but I don't really think of myself as disabled. Not everyone would see me that way, and not everyone with Down syndrome is alike. What I can tell you is that I'm a regular guy with a few extra challenges, and I'm often underestimated because of how I look. Here's a story about that. My first semester in college, I was in a drawing for theater class. It was a required class for my degree, and I knew it would be one of the most challenging. Handwriting and fine motor skills are hard for me, but I knew I could do it. It would just take more time. About the fourth week of class, my instructor noticed that the drawings I turned in were improved. Then one day after class, she confronted me and asked if they were my drawings. I didn't even know what to say. Knowing that hours of extra practice and work it took, it didn't occur to me that someone would second-guess my capabilities. So I began videotaping the hours of work I did on each project before I turned it in. Discussions with the powers that be at MSC resolved it, but it didn't resolve the problem of someone else seeing a disability and thinking I'm not capable. It took a few more classes with the same professor to show her who I am and how I can achieve. In another class, I asked her to meet with her for help on my assignments. I was the only student to show up every time for driving class in person when it was an option, and she devoted time to working one-on-one with me because she recognized my dedication. It is hard for a teacher to say no when the student says yes. In the end, she understood I could accomplish the work, but with much more time than typical. Ultimately, she became one of the best advocates. She wrote a recommendation for me to be chosen for a program in the National Organization for Theater Technicians. I was selected this spring as one of 12 national delegates to the Gateway program at the USITT convention. We were a diverse group of students chosen from underrepresented populations in technical theater to be mentored and trained. I was the only one with a disability.
The words disability and disabled are tricky. Like so much of the language used to categorize other people, it's hard to know what is correct, appropriate, and preferred. Identity is both a construct of language and experience, so the answer to this is debated. Let's think back on our 2 socks as an example. I looked at those 2 identical socks and saw a pair. Adam saw a puppet show. But what if one of the socks was shorter than the other? What if one was striped and the other solid? What if one had a hole in it? Are they still a pair if they do not match? People in the sock making business would judge those socks to be deficient. Most would put those socks in the discard pile or relegate them to use as dust rags. But wait, what if our idea as society was not that a pair of socks must match? What if it was fashionable to expose one toe or roll one sock down? What if our idea of normal sock wear expanded to include creative and different possibilities? Better still, if you give those 2 socks to someone like Adam, they are an even better puppet show with a variety of characters. These ways of thinking about our 2 socks mirror the different models of defining and thinking about the meaning of disability. In the history of disability rights, there are 3 models used to define disability: the medical model, the social model, and the human rights model. Each one of these posits a different way of defining what disability means. The earliest and still most widely used model of disability is the medical model. This model defines disability as a health condition, an illness that needs to be cured or corrected. It comes with a diagnosis and a set of symptoms from a medical expert. But a diagnosis also means it comes with a label. The medical model starts with a concept of what a healthy, normal body looks like and acts like. Then it lists deficits that need to be fixed or cured. A person cannot climb stairs, cannot access the written word, cannot work beyond certain periods without a break. A sock has a hole in it. All social service and government programs, educational accommodations, insurance benefits, and so on rely on the medical model of someone being disabled. Now, the result of using a medical model can improve the lives of people. It gives them clarity and understanding of how to explain their differences. It gives them access to services and support that they need. However, this model mostly results in an entire group, 25% of American adults, being classified as the disabled, as if they're a homogeneous group. Of course they're not. The medical model of disability has resulted in segregation, pity, fear, and alienation. It also limits the social capacity of the person with the diagnosis to be included. It tells them what they cannot do and cannot be. Beginning in the 1980s, disability activists and academics began questioning the medical model. That led to a contrasting way of thinking about disability, the social model. A social model does not deny the reality of an impairment or its impact on the individual. It doesn't ignore the hole in the sock. But it does challenge the meaning of disabled because people with impairments and differences are disabled by barriers in society. An impairment is an individual's physical, sensory, or cognitive difference, such as being blind or having autism. People with impairments can be disabled by the conditions and attitudes around them. If we think again about the nature of our 2 socks, it leads to a model of disability that takes the social model one step further: disability as a human rights issue. There's a writer named Andrew Solomon who published a very important book in 2012 titled Far from the Tree. It tells the stories of parents with exceptional children with differences that are potentially isolating and that bring about questions of identity and acceptance. These identities include deafness, children who are prodigies, transgender, schizophrenia, Down syndrome, and others. He writes, "Disabled people are protected by fragile laws, and if they are judged to have an identity rather than an illness, they may forfeit those safeguards. We are all differently abled from one another, and context, which is socially constructed, often decides what will be protected and indulged. Being gay was a disability in the 19th century in a way that it isn't now. And it is now a disability in some locations in a way that it isn't in others. And it was a disability for many when they were young, but isn't today. The whole matter is intensely unstable. It doesn't really matter if the meaning is there, it matters only whether it is perceived. Most adults with different identities do not want to be pitied or admired. They simply want to get on with their lives without being stared at. We're now left with a predicament. How do we think and speak about disability? What is the human effect of identifying as disabled or not? And how do we as a society embrace difference as a normal part of the human experience? I don't have the answers, but I have tried a different way of doing things. One of those things is to assume that Adam has a right to be included in experiences that he chooses. No need to ask for permission. This is possibly the scariest and hardest part of my job as his mom. It means leaving fear at the door. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of further exclusion, fear that his experience will be the example that must inform all other opportunities to include other disabled children. It also means having the energy and insight to be constantly vigilant as the experience unfolds, to provide information, communication, and support to the ones in charge. But sometimes life's decisions are not multiple choice. And when Adam showed a dramatic flair for putting on puppet shows, I called Beth Doman at Springfield Little Theater. Adam was 5, and Little Theater was in the beginning stages of doing half-day summer camps for very young kids. Beth, who's now executive director, was education director at that time. I was so nervous trying to explain how much I thought Adam would enjoy being in their summer stages program, but that he had some unique challenges that they needed to be aware of. I wanted to find out if they were willing and able to support him. He had poor balance and coordination. He needed extra time to make it from point A to point B. He would fatigue easily and become distracted. Without skipping a beat, Beth said, "I think it would be good for him." Now, I would like to say that everything went smoothly from there. It really didn't. It was challenging. I frequently spent mornings sitting in the back of the auditorium, spying on the class to see how well he was managing and thinking up ways to better support both Adam and the class instructor. Most afternoons at pickup time, I would get there early, sometimes to find Adam engaged with the activities and trying his darndest to learn the song. But most of the time, I found him exhausted from the sheer concentration it took to focus and stay physically active for so long. On the last day of camp, we went to the final performance. Anything could happen, but nothing did. I mean, nothing happened. Adam made it out to the stage, following his fellow preschool cohorts to perform, and he sat down. I videotaped it all. I can confidently say now, and having discussed the memories with my husband Mike, we were both mortified. We knew he could have done it. We had seen him perform during rehearsals. Why couldn't he prove to the world what he was capable of when it mattered? It's shameful and silly now, but that is how we felt. Then afterward, when all the kids and parents were gathering outside the theater to go home, people kept congratulating us. Adam got positive reassurance that what he did was okay, that being on stage, being a part of whatever that was, made him successful. He got encouragement and an invitation to come back.
In the 20 years since I first sat down on the stage, I've never missed a summer at SLT. I got better. I learned to listen for cues and learned to call stage directions. I learned choreography and vocal techniques, but I still haven't figured out how to sing and dance at the same time. One time I didn't make a costume change fast enough and got caught one stage behind a giant snake. But they made it work. They gave me special rules according to my abilities, usually parts that didn't require speed or dancing. The Lamp Keeper in Aladdin, the Cabana Boy in Flat Stanley, and in the Jungle Book, they created a role for me to open the show running out on stage with a giant book to open for the monkeys to carry away. They were small parts, but I was important. Eventually, I decided to follow my passion in theater by earning a bachelor's degree from MSU. But since that singing and dancing theme didn't work out, I did technical theater, lights, sound, and making socks into puppets.
Earlier in this service, you heard Caleb Norman give our moment of perspective. Caleb is one of those amazing people who teaches kids at Little Theater and who embraces the possibilities in everyone. Last week, Caleb shared a story on social media that I want to read. Today, I had a very moving interaction. It was the final day of one of my acting classes, and a mom came to watch her teenage son, who was on the spectrum, perform. After class, she wanted to speak with me and told me she's almost reached her 2 years mark that the doctor said she had left to live. She and the family all know, and in the past couple of years, she has tried to find something for her son to get excited about. And my little class has been just that. It's been something he's looked forward to and will have conversations about. And she could feel in the atmosphere that this is a place where everyone is okay to be themselves and be where they are in their learning process. She came in her wheelchair, exhausted and bundled up, but she wanted to see her son do something he's found that makes him happy and to shake my hand for teaching it. That was a very special handshake, and I am deeply appreciative to have received her words. A couple reminders that this inspired. Theater is for everyone, and I never know what another person is experiencing in their lives outside of where I see them. The education director at Springfield Little Theater now is Lorianne Dunn. She has, above all, a commitment to character development. She holds a fierce belief in inclusivity and a whole lot of patience that made Adam's experience ultimately successful. He felt a sense of belonging, dignity, importance, and respect. But as much as they have always had an open door policy, it takes more than willingness. Sometimes those kids need an extra boost of support. And sometimes parents, like me, want to give their kid the chance to be successful and independent on their own terms, without feeling like they may be overlooked or misunderstood. Someone who will observe, get to know their challenges individually, and be there only when needed, just in case. So we figured out a way. The supported theater experience for young people of all abilities. There are performing arts opportunities in the area specifically for children with disabilities. Adam tried one. It catered to the broad category of young people with special needs. The problem was, he didn't feel like he belonged. He couldn't relate. He wasn't challenged. He felt even more different and odd than before. The expectations for what he could do were based even more on an assumed deficiency than ever. But using the powerful infrastructure of Little Theater's exemplary education program and eagerness to support all kids to the greatest extent possible, with the greatest expectation possible, we're creating something new. This program will invite any young person with any disability to enroll in their choice of classes. They will pay tuition the same as everyone else, but they will also be matched with a support person who has an interest in getting to know them personally and standing by to help them succeed, only when needed. They will not be any more or less different than everyone else in the class unless they choose it. In the view of everyone involved, differences and disability will be normalized. Believe it or not, nothing like this currently exists. People with disabilities are the least represented in the performing arts field. According to a Harvard study, 95% of disabled characters are played by able-bodied actors. Even fewer of those working in theater-related capacities, administrators, designers, technical crew, and educators, have disabilities. Several years ago, life for our family hit one of many stumbling blocks. I can't really remember what the situation was exactly, but I voiced my frustration at the problem. Madam said, "It's not a problem if we can do something about it." It's not a problem if we can do something about it. Think about that. On an existential level, it is a brilliant and purely optimistic way of viewing the world. It says, I am not a victim of circumstance. I have control over my destiny. I view the world as full of possibility. I may not have a matching pair, but I have 2 socks, and that makes a puppet show.